Beyond the revenue, the margins, the cash needs, do you, in the spirit of telling the story, do you also want to try to put a valuation on the company itself?
So I don't like to talk about valuation in a pitch deck. So I don't think it's good negotiation strategy to talk about valuation in a pitch deck. So typically the pitch decks, you're going to be going through that when you meet with a venture capitalist for the first time and going through the different slides. I typically would advise you to not start talking about valuation until you're in the fourth or fifth meeting and you have a better understanding of what their interest levels are, and you also want to have a good understanding of what other folks you have interested. You're going to be in a much better situation if you're talking about valuation and you know you have 2 or 3 different parties that are interested, and that way you can push your valuation up. But I would avoid talking about valuation in a pitch deck. I would avoid talking about valuation in a first or second meeting. And when you do talk about valuation, I would have a much more general conversation about it. And the thing about valuation is it's not going to be based on some rational argument. So you're not, no one's building a valuation based on your net present value of your company or based on your future revenue projections. You're building a valuation based on all this qualitative data that's very subjective.
Usually we like to see valuations straight up front and early on, and at least a prediction of that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different. So the Angels Forum is a little bit of it's a different organization than a venture capital firm, right? So it's a little bit different. My advice to entrepreneurs is to put off that discussion and to delay that discussion and to not have that discussion in the initial stages. And I think it's much better to get a sense from the venture capitalists that you're working with on what they think your valuation should be, and I think it's much better to talk to several different people. So the ways that we typically like to handle that if we're going out and we're raising money with our clients is we'll have a conversation about what we're doing. The question of valuation will come up. It'll be a general conversation without any sort of firm placeholder put down. And hopefully we can have several of those conversations so that we can try to get a sense of what the market is for our valuation right now for our company, and then have that discussion. So you guys might be pushing your entrepreneurs to come up with a valuation, and I can understand that perspective, and I can understand why you would want to do that. But for an entrepreneur that's raising money from a VC, I think they should avoid it in the initial conversations if they can.
Hold your cards.
Hold your cards. Yeah, absolutely. Hold your cards. It's negotiations, right? And you're basically going into a hardcore negotiation, and you want to think about it as strategically as possible and be as smart about it as possible. So if you're raising money from an angel group, it's a little bit of a different strategy.